Hello everyone. My family and I had a weird night at the Great Wolf Lodge. We've stayed here 3 times before with no problems ever, but this was the first time anything like this has ever happened before. We stayed at the Great Wolf Lodge and had a sweet room. It has 2 conjoining rooms with 2 doors, where you can lock the room from either side. The kids stayed in the kids' stall room with kids' bunk beds, and we stayed on the non-kids side room. We kept the doors open for both sides, and I made sure the doors for both rooms were fully locked, including the lock, where you can't fully open the door from outside. At midnight, my son, 6 years old, ran into our room half awake next to our bed and was crying half asleep sitting up right next to us. I asked him if he had a bad dream and he said, "No, I really saw something scary in the room. It was a big kid with a dark shadow walking around." I ran right past him to get here. I knew I checked the room before we went to sleep and figured it was his imagination, and we went back to sleep. Then 3 a.m., my wife sat her day up frantically looking around, and I asked what's the matter. She said someone yelled, "Mom, you honestly didn't hear that?" I told her no, I didn't. Then she asked me to go check on our daughter. I got to the kids' bunk bed and in the next room, and found her out of bed bundled up in the corner, hyperventilating and full of tears. I swooped her up, and she started saying, "Be careful, Dad, he's still in here." I ran her back to our room and laid her on our bed with my wife and started searching the whole place. I turned all the lights on and checked literally everywhere, and there was no one. The doors were untouched, locks still in place, and windows unable to open. Honestly, I was feeling the walls and mirror looking for hidden doors. I asked my daughter what she saw, and she said she was laying on the top bunk and thought at first it was me walking towards their bunk bed. But as I got closer, she realized it wasn't me. She said this person was taller and skinnier than me. It also had smooth white skin and a neck longer than a normal person. Its skin was paper white, and looked naked but wasn't naked. It didn't appear to have much facial features. I asked if maybe it was a blanket, and she said no, its skin was smooth without wrinkles. It walked straight up to me and I covered myself. Then I watched it walk towards the door where your room is. I came down the bunk when it walked away and peeked out the den window, but saw it still walking towards your room. So I hid in the corner. You found me and I tried to stay quiet so it wouldn't hear me because I thought it would kill me, but I started panicking and couldn't breathe, trying to be quiet. I was thinking of running out the front door into the hallway. My wife asked our daughter if she was trying to be quiet. Why did she yell, "Mom?" Our daughter said, "No, I never said anything because I didn't want it to hear me and kill me." I didn't even hear our daughter say anything besides her hyperventilating as I got close to the bunk beds. I told my daughter to not mention what she had saw to our son, even after he tells us what he saw when he wakes up. I know he would be spooked if he found out his sister had a similar encounter a few hours after him. Both of our kids consistently sleep in their own rooms since they were little and have never ran into our room in the middle of the night, unless our son had a rare bathroom accident. At this point, we figured the kids' room was sketchy, so we kept them with us, then closed and locked our room from that room. It took an hour for my wife to fall back asleep. I was honestly spooked by this whole thing, so I left the hallway light on and figured I'd just keep watch and stay awake till daylight. After she fell back asleep, the closet light I left on turned off and wouldn't let me turn it on, so I turned the bathroom light on. A little later, I heard loud knocking on the conjoining room door I had locked. I honestly got goosebumps and tried to convince myself it was coming from the front door, but knew it was from the conjoining door. I debated whether to ignore it or check. I felt vulnerable laying down without checking, so I went and checked, and there was nothing, just an empty room, luckily still with the lights on. Half an hour later, my wife, still asleep, started freaking out in her sleep. She appeared to be having a night terror, which she has had before 1 to 2 times per year in past. I woke her up and she was frantic. She stood up and said she dreamt. She woke up from a dream in the same bed. She went to the bathroom in our room, came out, and ended up being stuck in the other room, locked in with the evil entity. She said I had her locked in the other room and she was knocking like crazy in her dream, trying to get back in on our side before the entity got her. Later in the morning, our son woke up and we asked him to describe what he saw. He said he saw what looked like shape of a big tall kid with a long neck that was white divided by gray in color and had a scary big dark shadow walking around the room. He said it was making weird noises like it was speaking words he didn't understand. He said it walked right up to him in the bed and had big eyes that glowed like our cat's eyes look in the dark. As the sun came out, we got the courage to go into the other room and grab our belongings to leave. The last weird thing is the room had a weird smell, which wasn't present there the day prior. It had smelled like a weird incense was lit. Kind of reminded me of those stick incense that were popular back in the 90s. So I personally didn't see this thing, but both of my kids, 6 and 9, who have never had encounter like this, saw same thing 3 hours apart from each other and had similar description of it without knowing each other's description of it. The only thing that differed in their description was my daughter said it appeared faceless and my son said it had big glowy eyes and white divided by gray, not just white. However, my daughter covered herself when it got closer and my son watched it approach. I did, however, witness both of my kids having similar encounter. 2. My wife wake up to someone yelling mom. 3. The light turn off and not turn back on. 4. Banging on the conjoining room door. 5. My wife have a night terror where she was locked in the other room banging on the door 30 minutes after I heard banging on the door. I've never really been a big believer on hauntings and paranormal stuff, but after this I'm left questioning it in my head and find myself thinking about it all the time. It's a text-based game that you download on your phone that lets you make choices and develop your bit life by aging them up. I found it while looking for a game to occupy myself during a 6-hour flight, and against all odds, I got hooked to it. I'm not much of a gamer, unless you count Candy Crush, but for some reason this game really drew me in. All the options and unique scenarios just kept me coming back for more. My first bit life died as a mid-level salesman. The next was a famous musician. The one after was a notorious serial killer. Every new bit life was different, and every one more interesting than the next. One day, I was lying on my couch, sipping on a vitamin water, as my latest bite life lived out his final years. He was a very successful CEO, married to his partner for 40 years. and was the loving adopted father of two boys. The Black Death screen popped up as I aged him up one last time. Gary Newell died at the age of 82. He passed away peacefully in his sleep. I let out a satisfied sigh. Gary lived a very fulfilling, very successful life. I took another sip of my water, letting the silence of my apartment envelop me for a few moments. I checked the time, 9:18 p.m., enough time for me to start a new life. I clicked the little sperm icon to start again. My phone frownsy, the screen becoming unresponsive for a few seconds. Frustrated, I locked and unlocked the screen to try to get it to work again. It flickered back to life, the app opening again. I gasped as double-checked the new name. Rita Thatcher. The exact same name as me. I let out a laugh, trying to imagine what the chances are that the random name would be mine. I decided I was gonna give little Rita the best life possible, make her a CEO, or a famous painter, maybe even a movie star. Feeling excited, I took a look at the information screen. I was born a female in Glasgow, UK. My eyes went wide as I double-checked the location. I was born in Glasgow. My excitement slowly faded to a dull sense of dread as I continued to read. Born 28 November, same day as me. The feeling of dread grew as I read the names of the parents. David Thatcher, writer, age 29. Willow Thatcher, police officers, age 27. Those are my parents' names. My dad was a writer, and my mom was a police officer back in those days. I quickly did the math, and the ages also matched. With shaking hands, I clicked age up. Age, 1 year. My mother and father had a baby boy named Jensen. My blood turned to ice as I read the text again. No way, I said to myself over and over, unable to believe that this is really happening. My stomach wrenched itself into knots as I thought of my poor, sweet brother. I clicked age up. Nothing showed up for age 2 and 3. With each blank screen, the feeling of dread that Saturday inside me eased up just a little. I tried to imagine what the odds of all this being a coincidence was. Probably impossibly low. I clicked age up. Age 4. Your parents want to buy you and your brother a pet spaniel named Daphne. I let out a shriek as I dropped my phone and scrambled to the other side of the couch. I fell off the edge, my butt hitting the cold, tiled floor. I sat there for a bit, curled up and taking deep breaths. I remembered Daphne's sweet, brown eyes and golden coat. My parents got her for Jensen and I when I was 4. She was my sweet angel, my best friend for 5 years. I sat on the floor for a few seconds more, as the weight in my stomach eased up enough for me to get up. I went to the kitchen, grabbed a glass from the cabinet and poured myself some water. I leaned against the counter, taking slow sips as the feeling of dread faded little by little. I placed the empty glass in the sink and turned the hot water on, grabbing the sponge and dish soap as the water heated up. Still in a daze, I cleaned the glass, rinsing off the suds and placing it on the rack to dry. I think I'm just tired, overworked and delusional from working a double shift. I'll just turn off the game and go to bed. I jumped as a ping sounded from the lounge. It's my phone, letting me know I had a message. I made my way to the lounge, sitting back on the couch. As I picked up my phone and glanced at its screen, Byte Life was still open, its text waiting patiently for me. As I swiped down and checked the notification, it was from Byte Life. Don't leave just yet, it said. You must be losing your mind. Rita, I told myself as I clicked H up, bracing myself for whatever came next. It's just a game. I tried to tell myself. It didn't help. 6 years. My dad is now addicted to alcohol. I tried to lock the phone, my hands fumbling over the button over and over in a panic. The screen refused to lock, the text becoming blurry as I started to cry. In frustration, I threw my phone across the room. It gave a loud crack as it bounced against the wall, its screen ripping off and hanging from the main body. The phone started pinging, slowly at first, but picking up speed until it became a torrent of noise. Mechanically, I made my way over to it, delicately picking up the screen as its cabling snapped off and left the main body behind. Impossibly, notifications flooded across the top of its lit screen. "Don't leave just yet, Rita," it said, all from ByteLife. I watched as they flickered by. Suddenly they stopped, one final message popping up from the text app. It was from my dad. "Keep playing, Rita." I clicked H up. 7 years. My brother Jensen died at the age of 6. My eyesight became more blurry as tears flowed down my face. He died in a car crash. My dad was driving that car. He picked him up from nursery school and was on his way to pick me up from my school when it happened. It was a head-on collision. The police found my dad over the limit and halfway across the other lane. Another notification, this time from my mom. "Keep going," numbly. I clicked H up. 8 years. My mom died at the age of 35. The phone's speakers came to life from the other side of the room, giving me a start. 2 voices flooded out of it. It's been years, but I recognized my parents' voices. It started out hushed, both of them whispering to each other so as to not wake little Rita. Soon the voices grew louder and louder, filling the living room as they screamed angrily at each other. I cupped my ears, trying to drown out the sounds. It grew louder, the noise filling the room until I screamed, trying to drown them out. Suddenly it stopped. A door slammed and the sound of heavy footsteps marched away. I heard someone open a kitchen drawer, the utensils clanging together inside it as someone rifled around. They pulled something out, slamming the drawer shut as they made their way back to where they came. I heard another ping come from my phone. She was stabbed by my father during an argument. The screaming turned my blood to ice. It started off loud and shrill, the sound reverberating throughout the house. It started becoming hoarse and choked, before cutting off to a gargling silence. I cupped my hands over my ears, dropping the screen as I curled into a ball. I began screaming, telling it to stop as the sounds of my dad's labored breathing joined the sounds of his knife. Suddenly it cut off with another ping. As my vision returned, I looked up at the screen. "Keep playing, Rita." I clicked H up. 9 years. My father committed suicide in prison at age 38. I've been sent to an orphanage. I clicked again. H up. 13 years. I was adopted by Adam Whiteley and Sarah Whiteley. Another ping. Almost there. 15 years. My adoptive father hit me for not finishing dinner. Age up. 18 years. I ran away from home. 19 years. I got a job as a barista. 20 years. 22 years. 25. My breathing is shallow. My head is fuzzy and my hands are shaking as I stare at the screen. 25 years. I turned 26 today. I jumped as I heard another ping. Almost there. I clicked H up. The Black Death screen popped up. Rita Thatcher died at the age of 26. I screamed as I heard my front door creak open. She was killed while at home. I'm sharing this story because it's been on my mind for a long time, and I've never really talked about it with anyone. A year ago, I lived as a paying guest in a house Kerala for about a month, and the experience was so bizarre and unsettling that it changed me in ways I never expected. From the very first day I moved in, strange things started happening. It began with a sensation I couldn't explain. I would feel a strong slap on my back or chest. Whenever I tried to sleep in the afternoon, it happened multiple times, and it was like someone was physically there, even though I was alone in the room. The worst part was the sleep paralysis. I would wake up, unable to move, and see dark, shadowy figures getting closer to me. One night, I woke up to find a young man lying next to me in bed. I could feel his presence beside me, his weight in the bed. But when I turned to look, he was gone. I tried to brush it off, but the experiences kept escalating. There were moments when the electricity in the house would flicker, and sometimes it would short circuit altogether, leaving me in the dark. But the most disturbing thing was that every morning, I would wake up to find a drop of blood coming from my mouth. I had no explanation for it. I felt physically fine when I woke up, but the sight of the blood every single morning was deeply unnerving. In addition to all of this, I started experiencing shortness of breath at night. It felt like I couldn't breathe properly, like something was pressing on my chest. It made sleeping even more difficult and unnerving. Then came the scariest incident of all. One night, during another episode of sleep paralysis, I saw a dark figure moving closer to me, just like the others I had seen before. Panicking, I reached out, trying to grab something, anything that would wake me up. But instead of grabbing the bed or the sheets, I grabbed someone's hand. It was cold, and I could feel the fingers tighten around mine. I was frozen, unable to move, and in that moment, I felt like I was connected to something that wasn't human. But when I tried to focus, the hand vanished, and I woke up, heart racing. The most unsettling part came about a week later, when I found out the young man I had seen in my room had actually lived there before me. He had tragically died in an accident nearby, and he was dearly loved by the family I was staying with. The house, I guess, still held some kind of energy or attachment to him, and I could feel it in every corner of the place. The final straw came when my father came to pick me up. On the way, his hand got stuck in the car door, and he lost a significant amount of blood. It felt like everything was connected, like the bad energy or whatever it was in that house was following me, even outside of it. After all of this, I started changing. I felt like I couldn't relate to people anymore. I became angry more often and began lashing out at my family members. Even though I didn't want to, I ended up isolating myself. And even now, I sometimes feel like a different person because of what I experienced. I don't know if it was the house, the energy, or just everything combined, but it left me in a place I've struggled to get out of. When I was a kid, I would normally see things out of the corner of my eye. I always knew I was sensitive to things like ghosts and the paranormal. Since I am Hispanic and our culture includes a lot of mythology, I'm 18 now and still experience and feel things. When I was about 5 to 7 years old, I experienced a sleep paralysis episode. This resulted in a Mickey Mouse toy I had standing up and cracking like it had bones. Honestly, my heart dropped and I realized I couldn't move my body. I could just watch. He turned around and stared at me. He grinned and it was just like the Mickey Mouse movie that just came out recently in the past few years. When it did come up, my heart dropped again like it had the night I had sleep paralysis. So you can imagine just what I was seeing in my paralysis. His grin had his face turning red, and the aura around him was a dark cloud with red specks in it. He then moved closer little by little and started laughing like Mickey Mouse but demonically, and then screamed and attacked me. I was religious then and had started saying the Hail Mary, reciting the rosary and everything in my head. I was screaming internally but saying it. Eventually the sleep paralysis went away and I slept fine until morning. At this time I was in my parents' basement. Since my dad had built my new room, it always creeped me out and kept me awake at night. So usually it'd be on my computer until I fell asleep. However, the basement had a dark, heavy feeling. I started closing my door and locking it after that night. However, back to the doll. Mickey in the morning. His neck was broken and the stitching fell apart. And so he has a huge gaping hole in his neck. This was the worst feeling that came over me when I went to investigate the doll. His head that episode did twitch slightly, but I never saw it bend its neck so hard, so it must have been when it lunged at me. Now being 18, I've had him locked in a box always since the night he attacked me. Last story. The day before Halloween, my friend and I went to the park and walked around. But as we were leaving, we felt like we were being followed. We rushed to run to my house as our insides were telling us to go home. During this run, I saw a person behind us several times. I rushed to run and that's when I saw the reason why he did that. My friend and I were being chased by a man with a knife. We got to my house and my father asked why we were pounding on the door so hard and fast. We replied that we would just call 911 and say that a man had shown up in the neighborhood. A few days later, the man was caught in the backyard trying to steal from a woman who lived alone. Those were the scariest moments of my life, but they were always kept secret because I was afraid of being labeled mentally unstable or worse. This story kind of creeps me out even to this day, but I have a pretty good one. I lived in Mesa, Arizona when I was 10 years old. We lived in a rough area, but I was just a kid completely ignorant to the dangers of the world. I was walking back home from my friend's house and my mother wanted me home by 9 and I'd always start walking back at around 8:40 to make sure I wasn't late. And it's only like a couple blocks from my house, so it wasn't a super long distance. It was around the time of year when the sun would set at 5:30 and be dark well before 7 p.m. So it was very much nighttime. As I'm walking, I hear a woman calling my name. I turn to look and see it was one of my mom's friends, but she didn't know her too well. However, I just saw that she was familiar and won't say a name, but I turned around and said hello and smiled. She walked up to me and told me my mom had called her and asked her to come get me and ride me back because something happened at my house. She said it was an emergency and that I needed to go with her and her husband, whom my family was also familiar with. I was only about 5 minutes from my house, but I was told it was an emergency and I agreed to go with her. As I'm walking, I get this weird feeling in my gut and this shaking in my legs that I now today realize it's my instincts being on high alert. I stopped for a minute and asked if we could call my mom, and she said my mother was in the hospital right now and that I need to hurry. Right as we were opening the door to the car, I hear my mother shout my name as loud as she can, and I turned on a dime and quickly walked towards my mom. My mom asked what's going on, and the woman replies and says that she was just giving me a ride home because she saw me. Was not the story she gave me, so I told my mother what she told me and asked what was going on. My mom just looked at me, and she could always tell when I'm lying vs when I'm telling the truth. The woman then goes to interrupt me, likely to lie, and my mom cuts her off and just stared back at her with the most shocked look ever, and these words still send shivers down my spine. She says in the most shocked voice ever, "You were trying to take my son." And the husband looks out the window, hurrying his wife in the car, and as I looked back towards him, I can see a syringe on the dashboard leaning against the windshield that he grabs right as I see it. She gets in the car because at that point my mom was ready to kill her and reached into her purse because she keeps a pocket knife. But they drove away, and right after they did, my mom looked at me and just burst into tears, saying, "I'm almost lost you." My mom knew full well what was happening, and I was still too shaken to even say anything and just hugged her back, and we went home. I was still in denial, and to cope, I would convince myself that maybe I wasn't in any danger. My family OFC never kept in contact with any of them. My stepdad at the time submitted a tip to the police of the incident. When they caught up with him about 3 months later, we had found out that he was arrested for having CP on his computer and found restraints in his closet, as well as some containers of propofol. They found pictures of me from my mom's Facebook downloaded on his computer as well, leading them to believe that I was actually being watched for a good bit. I never liked talking about it because to this day, if I hadn't stopped for those 10 seconds to ask the woman to call my mom, I don't know where it'd be or if it'd even be alive right now making this comment. And while it may seem like something that would have easily been forgotten, it was never the case for me. I haven't even told my closest friends this story, but I might sometime soon. I asked my mom what happened that night, why she came looking for me. She described the same feeling I remembered feeling moments before I was almost abducted, just a lot sooner than I did, and just had the instinct that I was in danger. I'm not usually a lucky person. It seems the odds are always against me, but I always remember how lucky I was that night, that my mom decided to listen to her instincts when I didn't. I've never ignored my instincts since, and every night after that, when I finally did decide to leave my house, my mom would walk with me all the way up until I turned 13 to come back to live with my dad. And that to date is the scariest thing I think I've ever experienced. It's some shit you only hear of on the news, and nobody ever assumed it will happen to them, but my life was a mere 20 seconds from being completely different. My fiancé, 21 meters, and I to after dash together. He recently had a back surgery that made him unable to do it alone. Getting in and out of the car was difficult for a while, so he drives and I do all the other stuff. It's a great system. We're very efficient and we never really have any trouble. Until today. We usually dash after 10:30 p.m., but we decided to go out from 12:04 p.m. as well before our usual time for some extra cash. It was smooth the whole time, until we do a double order at McDonald's. I'm exiting the McDonald's, order in hand, and crossing the parking lot when I notice out of the corner of my eye a bright yellow car with a black front bumper pulling up. I hit a little jog to not be in his way for too long and get into our car. We pull out and start to drive past the drive-through towards the exit. We almost get past that yellow car from earlier when he decides he doesn't want McDonald's anymore and pulls out into us. My fiancé is an extremely aware driver and noticed immediately. We swerve and drive forward to evade him and he keeps pulling out. He apparently doesn't notice. He's inches away from another car for 3 full seconds and we almost hit another parked car in the parking lot trying not to get clipped. Luckily there was no contact. My fiancé is, admittedly, hot-headed. I will say though, I think his reaction was justified based on how clearly distracted this guy was. My fiancé rolls down his window and says, "What the hell are you doing?" Apparently, was way too far. The driver and the passenger, without even exchanging a glance, hop out of their car and tried to approach us. Of course, my fiancé isn't trying to get in a one in the McDonald's parking lot and starts to drive away. We're heading towards the exit and I hear him say, "They're following us." I glance in the passenger side mirror and sure enough they're speeding up behind us. If they tried to open the door, I'm gonna have to kill these guys, he says to me while grabbing his gun from the center console. I'm immediately shaken and start yelling, "Chill and just drive over and over." As much as these guys are assholes, I really don't want to see anyone die today. We have to stop at a stop sign before entering onto the main road. They pull up right next to us and make hard eye contact while once again exiting their car. My fiancé speeds off and yells to call the police. I do and start shakily explaining what's happening and where we are to the operator, while watching them follow closely behind in the mirror. I can't explain to you how terrifying these guys were. The looks on their faces was so sinister. They were smiling. They weren't angry. They weren't upset. They were having fun. It was like they'd been waiting for something like this. They followed behind us for 10 miles. As the operator directed us to the police station. The whole time they motioned for us to pull over, and every time we had to stop at a stop sign, they opened their doors. I'm so grateful we didn't get stuck in a line of cars or hit any red lights. The operator instructed us to pull into the police station parking lot. "Roll up your window and lock your doors. Do not talk to them," she warned. My fiancé, fuming from the whole situation, replies, "If they come up to my car, I'm gonna shoot them." He explained to me after he meant, when we pull up to this parking lot, there better be an officers because I will defend myself and my fiancé any way I need to from these clearly unhinged people. But now isn't really the time to be articulate. So this is a recorded lie. She sounded almost offended. We live in Ohio. By the way, castle doctrine also covers your vehicle. If someone tries to attack you or even tries to enter your car, you are fully within your right to use lethal force. The idea of it made my stomach drop even lower than it already was. Unfortunately, we weren't that familiar with the area and in all the chaos, we missed the turn. We saw the fire station and pulled in there. I am still thanking God there was a firefighter standing out there, because as soon as they saw him, they continued to drive straight down the road. As they did, lo, The passenger leered out the window at my fiancé, eye contact and smirking. The firefighter was an absolute angel, reassured us not to be nervous about having the firearm, and that we did everything right trying to get away. We ended up making a statement with the police, just to have it on the record that we've had an incident with these guys, and hopefully they don't do that to anyone else. After all the chaos, we still completed those orders. So it was a happy ending for someone at least. I was having some doubt that maybe they didn't have bad intentions. Maybe they just wanted to talk. But why would they follow us? And why would they drive away when they saw someone in uniform? It gives me chills thinking about what they were planning on doing. We did end up going back out at our normal time, but to be honest, I was definitely looking over my shoulder the whole time. I was 14. My two cousins M and S were 13 and 9 at the time. I am 32 now. I grew up in WV, in the middle of mountains, in the middle of nowhere. My cousins would be dropped off for the summer and spring break at our grandpa's house, which was next door to me. So I got to see them quite often. We would climb the mountains and go for walks up the road. We would walk to what we called the first new house. Basically, someone new had built a house a mile from where I lived and had been a while since most homes there are much older. Anyway, there is a mile that is just open and no homes or anything within that mile. One day we decided to go for a walk, and we noticed a white van parked on the side of the road near the creek, but no people. We walked by a T and I told my cousins to stay near me because it was quite unusual. We walked by to the first new house and turn around to walk back home, and the van is still there, but this time there are two men staring at us and not looking away, just looking at us coldly, and I whispered to my oldest cousin to grab us and run. We took off running and they start coming after us in the van. Finally we come across the neighbor's yard, which had a creek right before the yard, and I tell them to jump and throw my little cousin S down the hill into the creek, and I continue running. And luckily my dad was standing on our bridge when I got there. I'm freaking out and telling my dad that the two men were trying to get us into the van. As I was telling my dad, the van drives by and the two men gave me a stare that I can only describe as evil. Their eyes held no emotion. My cousins were fine. S had cuts from some briars because I threw her over the hill. I didn't jump because I had a bad knee and knew I wouldn't be able to run anymore if I had jumped. So I took my chances of my knee giving up by continuing down the road, rather than knowing I wouldn't be able to get up. I jumped down the hill. We never saw that van again. We noticed the license plate was covered. There were no windows except the ones in the front. I knew they had bad intentions. Luckily, we were all fine. I literally just got off my shift delivering for Walmart. To give context of this story, I took a batched order this morning that was not in my usual area. It was in a city probably 25 miles from my usual pickups. Well, I finished my last order in another city, which is 35 to 38 miles from my actual house. I'm driving along, get spooked by cops, whatever. Then I see this car riding my ass, with specific headlights and a Toyota logo. Annoyed, I keep driving. I keep checking throughout my drive. They are still behind me. I'm crossing through towns and other cities to get home. Looking in my rear view, they are still trailing right behind me. I am getting more and more anxious as my GPS tells me I am 20 minutes from home. I check my mirror. The Toyota RAV is still behind me, closer than before. 15 minutes. They back off just a bit. 10 minutes. I am coming up on an intersection and they are still behind me. I need to make a choice, go straight or turn. I turn quickly, no brakes, no turn signal, traffic thickens, and I am pushing 50 mph on this road. I see them come up behind me once more. I'm sweating. The GPS tells me I have one more turn to make before I know where I really am. I floor it. I made just enough distance to take this turn again. Without a blinker and brakes, the turn is more of a side road that you can ease onto. I am pushing 50 the whole way. My car is going over bumps and I'm praying this person lost me. I come to the end of the road. I either go left to go home or right to get gas. I was nervous and scared. I turn right thinking if I go public, my usual gas station guys will help. I pull into the gas station, get 30, have them pump it while I do deep breathing. Right as the gentleman comes back with my card, the Toyota RAV pulls up next to me and the man inside is craning his neck to stare directly at me and grin. I never left that gas station so fast and booked it home. It's 6 minutes from my house. I got there in 3. Whoever that guy is, stay the hell away from me. I carry knives and mace for a reason. I was about 16 at the time, still living at home deep in the mountains at my family's home divided by cottage. I frequently walked the woods surrounding my home, but never really went that far out, either out of lack of curiosity or simply because I was lazy. One evening, I decided to take a flashlight and walk as far as I comfortably could into the valley behind my property. There's a large amount of deer, bears and other animals near where I live, so I also brought some bear spray with me. I was about 25 minutes, maybe more into my walk, when I started to get an uneasy feeling, like I was incredibly vulnerable or that I wasn't alone. I shrugged it off because I probably wasn't alone. I mean, there is a lot of wildlife in the forest, so it's not like I can just expect to be alone. I neared the creek that flowed around our property and noticed some garbage and some pots and pans next to the water, as well as what looked like a tattered sleeping bag and some shoes. I didn't think much of it, continued my walk, thinking about it every now and then, wondering if someone was camping out near our house. It was almost completely dark out now, so I turned around and began walking home. I kept glancing over my shoulder back towards the creek, worried someone might be behind me. After about 5 or 6 minutes of walking in the pitch black, I heard some branches snap a little ways behind me. My blood ran cold and I felt my heart skip a beat. I turned around and spent a minute just shining my flashlight in every direction, wondering if a deer or, God forbid, a bear was following me. Once I felt sure that nothing was there, I kept on walking. Not even a minute after I heard running footsteps trampling behind me. I didn't even turn to look what it was or who it was. I just began running as fast as I could. I'm pretty sure I called out, pleading with whatever it was or whoever it was to stop. I was still about 15 minutes from home. I desperately sprinted through the trees, trying to keep my flashlight pointed forwards so I didn't trip or fall. I kept pleading and screaming, hoping whatever it was would give up, but I kept hearing footsteps stumping behind me and branches being snapped off the trees violently. I heard pain, grunting, and what sounded like someone violently growling. I began crying out of fear, tears filling my eyes as I ran. Sounded like they were right behind me, almost like they could reach out and grab me. I heard one loud growl divided. I screamed right behind me, as whatever it was seemed to have fallen or slipped up. I kept sprinting and never dared to look back. I eventually stopped hearing the running behind. Once I made it to my property line, the light of my house in the distance ahead of me, I turned to see if I was still being followed. What I saw still torments me even now. A freakishly tall man was standing about 100 yards from me, my flashlight only barely illuminating him. He was wearing what looked like a tattered hoodie and no pants. I stood there for a moment, struck with fear, waiting to see if he would move. As I was about to turn away and run the last stretch to my house, he started sprinting viciously towards me, and by vicious I mean he was almost on all fours, using the trees to propel himself further, grabbing at the ground, lunging towards me. I let out a scream and ducked under my fence and sprinted as fast as I could to my house. By the time I got there, I was completely out of breath, my throat hurt and my knees were sore. I shined the light back towards the woods and saw the man at my fence waving at me, his tall and slender figure towering above the fence. I quickly made my way inside and locked all the doors. I woke my dad up and told him what had happened. I don't remember exactly what he did about it, if he called the cops or just let it be, but I don't think anyone else ever saw the guy again. I still never go into the woods alone or anytime near dark, and I certainly stay away from the creek. I don't know if he's still out there, but I do know that if he had caught up to me, I might not be telling this story today. Hardly anyone knows it, but Windfall, Indiana exists. It exists in such a way that when you're there, you feel like you're in a completely separate world. No shops, no restaurants, no anything, just a gas station, a bar, a post office, and some dirt roads. It has an energy to it, like you can feel a thickness in the air that offsets your intuition. It makes a human being's natural senses spike, like an animal who knows a predator is nearby. At least, that's how I personally feel about it. The entire place is off-putting. The people aren't much better either. I was only 13 when we moved there. My older sister was 16 and my younger one was 12. Both of them did considerably better than I did socially at school, and I was often left by myself at our new home. Mom was working quite a bit and often stayed after hours. She said it was because we needed the money, and I'm positive we did, but I think it was more so to keep her mind off the divorce. The new house was small, a 3-bed 1-bath with a dining room and a living room. We had a fenced-in backyard and a muddy lawn with an old tree sagging over it. It was the dead of winter, and as a 13-year-old girl going through her first of many depressive episodes to come, I submerged myself into the internet. I came home every day to an empty house, made myself a snack, and planted myself on the couch to get lost in a YouTube rabbit hole until my eyes hurt. We'd only lived in the house for a couple weeks, but I was beginning to adjust to a new life. Sure, I didn't like Windfall, but I wasn't afraid of our house. School was miserable, but I cherished my time to myself. I felt as if I was getting a small taste of the adult life 13-year-old me was so eager to have. I wasn't scared to be alone until I caught sight of him. Sometimes in my YouTube crusade, I'd get distracted by the TV and my laptop screen would fall asleep. I'd look down and jiggle my mouse and get back to it. But this time, there was a small shape standing behind me in the doorway of my mom's bedroom. Just a short apparition with noticeably spiked hair. It didn't move, but the hair on the back of my neck stood up straight, and my skin began to break out in goosebumps. As quick as he appeared, he was gone. I hadn't turned to face him, but I knew in my heart it had to be a little boy. I wasn't afraid of him. The house was old and I felt that maybe he was just curious. I didn't get the feeling that he was bad or that maybe I should fear him. He'd just surprised me was all. It became normal to see him. Most times he was in the reflection of my screen. Other times I'd look up and see him leaning against the doorway of the dining room. He was never in color, only a black shadow that faded away as soon as I blinked. I didn't want to tell my sisters or my mom. I'd been getting horribly bullied at school nearly every day, and I felt if I were to say something, they'd make fun of me or simply call me crazy. I didn't want them to think I couldn't handle being alone. Either way, he was harmless at first, so he began to peer closer to me, or things in the house would fall over mysteriously. Cabinets would slam shut or the TV would turn off. Curtains would sway as if someone had run their hand through them. I'd just blare my headphones and stay put on the couch, staring at my laptop and praying that anybody, would come home. I'd see him and my face and palms would begin to sweat. I started to feel like maybe the curious spirit maybe wasn't so innocent, like he was teasing me or pushing his limits to see just what he could do to instill fear in me. I'd never tried to talk to him or communicate, and quite honestly, I had no interest in trying. The first time I ever saw him in detail, I was in my bed. My little sister and I shared a room, and I had top bunk while she was on the bottom. I began to wake in the middle of the night, sweaty with my heart racing. Each night I'd look over the railing of my bed and see him standing in the dead center of my room, staring at my little sister as she slept. He could have only been 7 years old. He was skinny, and he had a red plaid button-up shirt tucked into black pants. He had spiked, bleached blonde hair and pale blue eyes. What stuck out about him was how white his skin was. He looked nearly albino, yet his lips were a shade of deep purple. I'd be too afraid to close my eyes or to even breathe. I'd wake in the nights to come, holding my eyes shut because I knew when I opened them he'd be there. Some nights, my sister wouldn't be in her bed because she was still young enough to want to be in mom's bed. He'd still just stand there, staring, not acknowledging me or letting it be known that he knew I was there. But I Northeast W he knew. As I kept this secret, our household began to fall apart. My sisters and I were constantly fighting. My depression was worsening and self-harm crept into my daily life. My mother began to drink heavier, and in fits of rage or sadness, she'd say things she didn't mean. She'd change into a person filled with anger when she'd once been so loving and sweet. My family began to feel like strangers to me. This led to even more time in the house on my own, as my sisters used their friends' houses as an escape. I had made no friends at my new school, so the only thing I could do to get away was to take walks to the gas station or to play with the dog. The next-door neighbors kept chained outside to a tree. Every time I'd see the little boy, I'd stop what I was doing and go sit with that dog. I'd stay put for a few hours until someone arrived home. Things hit their peak when it came time for me to bathe. I loved baths, but for some reason when I took baths at this house, I felt nothing but anxiety. My chest would tighten and burn when I'd lay back to wash my hair, and I'd feel like I couldn't bring myself back up. I'd scream for my mother because I often felt paralyzed with fear. Even just looking at the bathtub gave me an uneasy feeling and sent my heartbeat banging through my ears. Eventually, my anxiety of baths evolved into a full-fledged fear of water. Swimming pools, baths, lakes, it's all ruined for me. When I think back on it, it never felt as if the house had a happiness to it. Only darkness and that same energy that Windfall emitted so strongly. I was overcome with relief when Mom let us know that she and my stepdad had worked things out and we'd be moving back home. I couldn't have gotten out of that house fast enough. The only thing I didn't want to leave behind was the neighbor's dog. I had learned to shove away those memories. The little boy's face still popped up in my dreams from time to time, but I'd gotten over my anxiety of being home alone. Mom got better, and she eventually went back to being her old self again. Time passed and the depression got easier to manage. I'd nearly forgotten about him. We'd all been drinking around the bonfire one night, shooting the shit and talking about old memories. I was 20 now and felt that I could bring up the boy and handle whatever backlash I got from it. I asked my mom if she remembered the house and if she ever saw anything there. Oh, for sure. That place was haunted as hell, were her exact words. Yeah, my older sister chimed in. There was a little boy there, but he was not a little boy. I felt my heart drop to my stomach. He was evil. I'd always see him running around the dining room table or standing in Mom's doorway. That's why I was always at Olivia's, because I hated that house. She continued on. I told them my story, all of it. I told them why I'd suddenly become so afraid of water and why I hated being alone. It wasn't just him. There was an old woman there too. My mom said she'd stand in the dining room and tell me to get out of her house. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, and she'd be standing at the end of my bed staring at me, pissed as hell. That's why I'd get up in the middle of the night and grab your sister out of bed so she could sleep next to me, because I was so scared. The worst time it happened, I woke up and saw that boy sitting on my dresser, swinging his legs. He hopped off the dresser, walked to the side of my bed, and jumped at me. He jumped straight at me and then disappeared. Mom continued on. When we left, I looked up the house, and turns out an old lady used to own that house and she died there. What about the little boy? I asked. Yeah, a little boy died in the house back in the 70s. He drowned to death. Since leaving the house, I've returned to Windfall a handful of times to visit family. The energy is still there, that heaviness and otherworldliness. As years go on, more and more ghost stories emerge from Windfall and the people who've lived there. Native American spirits and little children. There's something about that place that falls just perfectly on a wave of paranormal possibility. It radiates with things I don't know if we as a species will ever be able to wrap our heads around. Windfall, Indiana exists, and so does everything else in it.